with the Capital Markets IQ, CMIQ. CMIQ itself, by the way, is a registered investment advisor in the United States. They're fully regulated, they're licensed, and they make sure that everything that we all do is totally within the American financial system, meets all the regulations. And America is probably one of the most robust regulatory environments financially in the world. So basically, tonight was not a sales pitch for anything at all. It just want to be clear that it's a webinar as an educational effort to help people understand how things work better. Um, for those who have sometimes also financial roots in more than one country, a lot of our clients or people that are in touch with us, have money in other countries as well as living here in Eretz Yisrael. So we try to help them to find, a comfortable and a workable balance between all the different financial systems and the institutions, the whole legal approaches, dealing with regulatory requirements, taxes, paperwork, and all other factors like that to make people's lives a lot simpler and to navigate through the complex financial network. So just a couple of rules for tonight. Only the speakers themselves are going to be able to speak to the audience, and that's in order to avoid background noise and any distractions in that. But you're encouraged to write all your questions down and all your comments that you have in the chat, that we will try to get to as many questions as possible. In fact, the presentation will be relatively shorter, but we'll hopefully be able to spend the time to answer all your questions. So we want to answer all your questions and concerns as much as we can. So please type in your questions at the bottom of your screen. You should be able to see there. All the technical work tonight is being done by Mrs. Bracha Leah Tates. Thank you very much. And she'll also be recording the webinar. So for those who would like to get a copy of it, we'll be sending it out afterwards, and we'll post it up in a short while. In addition, she'll also be contacting all those who have registered for the webinar to follow up to see if there's any other questions and comments that you have, because as we know, oftentimes people have very specific questions that you're not going to want to share necessarily in a group setting. So we'll give you the opportunity to follow up after the meeting, and she could be in touch with you to even arrange, if you want. Those who are registered for the seminar are also entitled to a free financial consultation meeting, which we could schedule together, which is a scheduled meeting for free with her. So during these consultation meetings, you'll also be able to speak, obviously confidentially, to ask your personal financial questions, and that, which obviously in the evening, a lot of the questions I'm sure will be more general in nature. So during this particular webinar, and I'll follow up soon with the questions I see as they're coming in already, Baruch Hashem. So we're going to be addressing tonight several very important topics, such as why it's important to maintain a U.S. bank account, various tax shelters that are available through U.S. investment accounts, excuse me, and how to utilize the best financial systems and other helpful financial tools. Hopefully we'll be able to share with you tonight. So in addition, we're going to hear briefly in a minute or two from our special guest speaker, Mark van Gelderen. He's going to be able to explain how you don't have to be limited to any one financial advisor, but you can actually choose between hundreds of financial managers. So you're going to also hear more about how potentially to be able to reduce your taxes, potentially your costs, and get hopefully higher returns. I'll give you one concrete example before I then bring Mark on to speak with us and answer your questions as well. Oftentimes people don't realize, they think, I remember there was somebody who was attending one of our seminars a few years ago, and we contacted them after the seminar, and we had a meeting with them, went down south and met with them, went over their account, and just give you one brief example of how we were able to be helpful. They actually had, I think it was like $400,000 or $500,000 of municipal bonds. So as I was looking over their account, they said, like, why do you have so much money in municipal bonds? They said, well, we realize that it doesn't have the greatest returns, but the taxes are very low. said, yeah, the taxes in the States, there's no tax, but here it's taxed at 30% or 35%. So that one idea that they realized and made a change in their account changed, and of course they became clients of ours after that. That point I'm just saying is that oftentimes people think that they're set up in the States, but the States don't understand, tax ramifications and things like that for people who are living abroad or living in Eretz Yisrael. So again, I'll just take, we have already more questions coming in, but first what I'd like to do is be able to welcome to the program Mark Van Gelderen, who was formerly a professor at the Barzilai University for the Peace Corps. He helped develop a dozen community services that was in the Seattle area. One of these, which he created, he taught teachers financial literacy actually at the graduate school level. He founded the Financial Resource Network, actually now more than 30 years ago. Wow. Basically, Mark's goal is to help people, to help individuals, families, and businesses have greater financial success by really actually simplifying the issues and finding better financial related systems and services that could help people. And he'll start today to discuss talking about laying out some of those basic ideas for us all, and then we'll be able to get to your questions. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce to our program Mark Van Gelder.
Okay, thank you very much, Yitzhak. I think we also need to thank the couple who encouraged Yitzhak to go and set up a live seminar, which unfortunately we can't do tonight. Kalman and Rosalie Brazilow in Rehovot, and without their initiative tonight wouldn't have happened, and we thank you very much. Uh, Okay, so what I want to first of all mention is something that just happened a few minutes ago, which was an Azaka, an air raid siren, and uh, uh, I'm in the Shvela towards Tel Aviv. Yitzchak is by Beit Shemesh, and there may be Azakot going off by us. They may be going off in other parts of the country. If we don't have an Azakah for ourselves, we will continue. This is being recorded. Anything you miss, you'll be able to pick up later on. And uh, as much as possible, I'll try to be here. If we leave for a couple of minutes, the recording will be staying on, and we'll come right back and pick up from where we were. So hopefully we can go on to page 2 of the presentation, and there it describes what we do. We're a family office. We're not selling any products. We are trying to represent clients' best interests and to find them the solutions to their problems. So, a quick disclaimer, which is already on the third page, right on top, is that this is only summary information and we're not giving you any advice of any kind. Any ideas that come out of this should be confirmed with qualified professionals. And our strong point is not to be lawyers, not to be accountants, not to be financial managers or insurance salesmen, etc., but to try to help people make as good a decision as is possible. So, our expertise is helping to make better decisions. And it doesn't go beyond that. Let's go to page number 4. What we're going to be doing this evening, oops, I think I skipped a page. No, want to be on page number 3 yet. Okay. When we're working with people, we divide the work into these 6 areas here. We're going to be talking a little bit tonight about legal advice. We're going to be talking a lot about financial, retirement, estate planning, and that sort of thing. and we will be talking somewhat about tax planning. And then at the end, depending on the questions you come up with, we'll talk about investments, insurance, and other things. So going back to page 4, just to quickly cover some of the areas that anyone in Israel should be somewhat familiar with. We're not going to go into them in detail, is the list of things on this page. The next to the last line is one thing that I want to make people more aware of because most Olim don't know how social services work here and how to plug into the system. That whenever one is hospitalized, part of the process in Israel is that there's a social worker who's looking at your case and is available to answer your questions, particularly in terms of follow-up that is non-medical, like do you need some devices at home to help you recuperate, etc. And they are directly in contact with municipal social workers. The social work system in Israel is divided up into municipalities, and if there's anything that needs to be done for you or where you need help, it goes through the municipal social service system. And that's something that's very well developed here and is a little bit different than how it works in other countries. The other things on this page we can answer if there are questions. And let's go on to the next page, page 5, which we'll just pass through. We're not here to talk about Olim rights and that sort of thing, but I thought you should have a checklist of some of the things you need to consider as part of the process of coming to Israel, the 10-year tax holiday, and what happens at the end of it or beyond it. So let's go on to page 6. Uh, Banking, savings, and investment planning. Uh, the main thing that we want to get across and the situation we're in terms of what's going on around us is certainly a good example of this. When there are emergencies locally or around the world, you need to be able to get to money. And if you're living in Israel, you need to have emergency funds here and to be able to use it. Israel can be and has been cut off from the international banking system. That happened in 2008, and it wasn't just Israel, but it was most countries around the world. For a number of weeks, the international money transfer system was in free fall, and we unfortunately may experience that again if this current situation worsens. And it's important that you have prepared assets in places you can easily get to them. And depending on your situation, we can explain that further to you in relationship to where your assets are and what your needs are down the road. And there's other considerations in terms of banking that are listed here on page 6. Part of what we promised in the flyer that many of you saw when you signed up is that we would have solutions for making it easier to manage money. We put together more than 30 years ago already a system with a local money manager's name is Moshe Yonas, and it is we're on page 8 now. Uh, of and the money management system is pretty simple, it's pretty straightforward. It doesn't work quite as well as the American one, but it's something that can go and help you have emergency money, have money to pay bills automatically without you having to supervise it, and it can take care of things when you're out of the country or if you are ill. So that's something that many of you may want to know more about, and Yitzchak and I and others on the staff can help you understand what's going on and put you in touch with the people who set it up for you. That's page 8. Just want to mention a few things about Israeli charge cards. Uh, Israeli Visa cards, MasterCard, Diners Club, whatever, tend to be relatively expensive in terms of monthly fees. However, everything in Israel is negotiable. And all the banks, if you tell them that's what you want and you know it's available, will provide you with a free Visa card or MasterCard. And it will be usable for domestic use, but uh, it won't be for international use. If you want to use it internationally, you'll have to pay the monthly fees, etc. And one of the key things to keep in mind about charge cards and banking in Israel is that it's like going to the Makolet. Everything is negotiable. And if you don't ask for reduction of fees, you don't get it. Okay. Um, One last thing is number 3 here on page 9. If you're having automatic payments being done for your utility bills and other things, it should be done through your credit card, not through your bank statement, your bank account, because the fees will be lower. That's an important thing to keep in mind. Okay, let's go on to page 10. Uh, 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 that's the Moshe Yonah's money management system, which I mentioned before, and we'll be happy to explain it if there are any questions. Okay, going on to page 11. This is for money that is outside of Israel. We believe very strongly in American cash management accounts. They're unique to the United States. No other country has allowed a similar system to exist because it destroys the banks. They can't make enough money doing this. Here on page 11, it gives you a summary of what the advantages of this are. But if you go on to page 12, uh, it's more focused on people who aren't American citizens. These are cash management accounts are available for money that is kept outside of Israel for anybody who lives in Israel and has an Israeli utility bill and a passport from most countries. And these, many of the advantages are given there on page 12. If you want more information, we can give it as part of the questions and answers that will be coming up in relatively few minutes, or we can send you more information separately. Now, going on to page 13. What I've done here is reused slides that came from a seminar that we did with a leading accountant back in September. Uh, we work very commonly with accountants all over the country and from other countries as well. And here are several slides that give you some of the issues that come up in terms of cross-border taxation. Leon Harris is really an expert in just about all the different countries and how they relate to Israel. But there are other accountants that are easier for simple questions to use and are more focused on people's individual needs. If they're Americans, Canadians, Australian, Hungarian, or whatever, and we can put you into contact with people that have specialties in your area of need. So let's go on to page 14. Uh, yeah, although he makes a living off of it, he was jokingly calling it the tax joys of Aliyah. And the main thing on page 14 is the bottom half is that people who are pre-Aliyah, they need to pay attention to what some of the tax rules are here because they could be using up some of their 10-year tax holiday if they don't if they stay in the country too long before Aliyah. Let's go on to page 15. Uh, and there's a very important point there. This is for lone soldiers and others who are here that they can get more than the 10-year of tax holiday if they know how to do it right. Uh, we don't do it. You need an expert who knows how to make the appeals and so forth, and we can put you into contact with such people. Okay, and here on page 16, you get some idea of the special issues for people who are coming from different countries, and those special issues are things that you can often easily research by doing Google searches, AI searches, or to talk to the people who are familiar with them because they specialize in those national areas. Now, getting back to some of the other thing. Oh, one last thing on page 17 that we want to highlight is the middle topic there, trusts. Israel, American, most Olim consider the Americans in an unfortunate situation because of the way they have to report taxes, even so they've made Aliyah or living here long term. Israel has done a similar thing in the world of trusts. It's at the forefront of taxation of trusts, whether they are in it, the situs is in Israel or they're in another country. And even if you're only one of several beneficiaries of a trust, but you are Israeli, that trust is potentially taxable in Israel, no matter where it is in the world. So if you have now any relationship to a trust or will have in the future, it's something you really need to get legal advice because that can be a real problem, not only for you, but for others who may be part of that trust. Going on to page 18, telling you a little bit about how the Israeli tax system works. The main thing that people, especially those coming from North America, have trouble understanding is where Israel is in terms of taxation, in terms of its development, implementation, so forth. The Israeli tax system, as we know it today, basically began afresh in 2003 because Israel is an associate member of the European Union in the same way Malta and Cyprus was until a couple of years ago when they became full members. And remember that Cyprus is only about 200 kilometers away from the north of Israel. And it is not at all unreasonable to think that at some point down the road we may become a full member of the European Union. Most people aren't aware of that we now have associate status, and as a result of that, Israel's tax system had to be updated, which it was done officially starting in 2003 to conform to European Union standards. And the way the tax system works before then already, but even more so now, is like a tax system of a middle-sized Western European country like Belgium or Finland or any number of other countries. And as a result, there is a certain way of thinking about things and doing things that very often is foreign to North Americans who come to Israel in particular. The British tax system is closer in most regards to what we have here. The interesting thing about the tax system here in Israel is that there are relatively few tax preparers who work with retail clients. In fact, 70% of all adults in Israel do not have to do an annual tax report because taxes are taken out at source. You only need to do a tax report in Israel if you keep foreign assets to report what you have abroad, or if you own a business or self-employed. And there, as a result, most people in Israel do not fall into those categories. And as a result, they don't have to worry about an annual tax report. And that's very different. And you'll now notice that there aren't advertisements for tax preparers to the general public or um, networks of tax preparers, etc., here in Israel. Okay, so if you need more information, we'll be happy to discuss that in the question and answer period or uh, on an individual basis or to send you to tax experts that might be able to solve your problem. The last item on page 18 is something that we want to make sure everyone is aware of. Here in Israel, if you are a taxpayer and can show that you're paying taxes, you can get a refund on all donations you make of 35%. And the system has just been improved as of January 1st of this year so that it can be done online. And this is a major advantage that people have if they're making donations to Israeli uh, nonprofits that are registered with the tax authorities as charitable organizations. And that it's commonly known as Chapter 46 Amutot, charitable organizations, and they qualify you for a 35% tax refund against the taxes that you have paid in Israel during the year. They're not giving back money uh, that you haven't paid in, but it's based on what you've paid in, and any tax preparer or tax professional can explain to you how the system works, and we will send you further information about this. Okay, let's go on to page 19. Taxation in Israel for Olim is based on double taxation treaties. Israel has tax treaties with almost 50 countries around the world. All the significant English-speaking countries, other than maybe Ireland, have tax treaties, and each one of them is a little bit different in terms of how it works and what's going on. The idea is that you don't pay twice a tax for the same thing. However, it does not work quite as well as we would like because the Israeli tax system and tax systems abroad do their computations somewhat differently. In the United States and Canada, and I believe in Britain and elsewhere, there is a uh, tax level you pay based on how much taxable income you have. So you could be in the zero tax bracket, and it could go up to the 30 or even more tax bracket, depending on the wealth that you are needing to report to the tax authority in your former country. Here in Israel, the system is different. Taxation is not coming in different levels, but it is taxation from the very first shekel. And most things in Israel are taxed at 25%. Some things as low as 15%. Some things could be 35%, but the vast majority of things are taxed at 25%, and that's from the first shekel, and it doesn't increase even if you have millions or billions of shekels of profit that year that you need to report. And that is somewhat different than it is in most other countries where you have to do tax reporting. Okay, non-Americans, non-US citizens have to be aware that anything they do in Israel is going to be reported back to their prior country under a system called the Common Reporting System. This was set up by the OECD about 10 years ago. Most countries outside the United States have bought into it, which means that tax authorities in one country and another country can talk to each other about you behind your back, and they don't need your permission to do so. And that's something to be aware of. The last item on the list is IGAs, intergovernmental agreements. You need to be aware that many other types of agreements exist. There are treaties like the Hague Treaty having to do with powers of attorney and agreements having to do with um, the movement of criminals across countries. Just can't think of the term for it right now. And then there are things like Bituach Leumi and the social service agencies of other countries. Israel and the United States do not have an agreement between Bituach Leumi and the United States, which is a tax advantage for Americans. But there are between Bituach Leumi and over 40 countries agreements, and this can be to your advantage or disadvantage. It is worth your while to look up on the website if you are checking out what your possibilities are to see if there are agreements between your former country and Israel. The majority of the items that are on page 19 are United States related. The third one is always one worth a smile. The entire reporting system that Americans have to go through if they're living abroad uh, began under a piece of legislation that is still referred to today called FATCA, and it actually was meant to say fat cats. It was legislation that was originally written by Senator Carl Levin of Michigan about 15 years ago. And he assumed that anyone who lived abroad and was a U.S. citizen was a fat cat. And as a result, there are many things that Americans have to be aware of, and their uh, acronyms are there on the list: FATCA, FinCEN, etc. Okay, let's go on to page 20. And page 20 is for higher net worth multinationals. For most people that we talk to, ourselves included, living internationally is adds to some of the headaches we need to keep track of. And the point of this seminar is to show you some of the ways to reduce that by using money management systems and a couple of other things I'll mention in the next few minutes. But for people who are higher net worth, coming to Israel can really be a big advantage because uh, it becomes relatively cheap for them to do international tax shelters and other things that can protect their assets and also reduce their taxation. And this is something that is fascinating uh, to look into for those who have some significant assets. And we see that often that Israel has attracted many higher net worth Jewish and some non-Jewish families because it allows them to take advantage of being international and having things set up so that assets are protected and taxes are reduced. And if this is relevant, we'll be happy to talk to you about that further. Uh, and Okay, so let's go on to the next page, which is page 21. There's two things I want to point out on that, which is something that probably got your attention on the second line, which says that Israel is a supermarket of possibilities and hustlers. When you come to a new country, it's easy to fall into a trap. We all have done it. We've all made decisions that at the end weren't worthwhile, but one or two rules in terms of avoiding hustlers, and that is doing good due diligence. Don't go into anything that's offered to you that hasn't a track record of at least 5 years. And if it's promising that after a certain amount of time you'll get your money back, you want to see proof of prior exits. There is virtually nothing that is a new idea that was just invented. Although all hustlers will tell you, I have something that nobody else has heard of before. Okay, there's ways to check on things by looking into the legal records, having an accountant who knows how to do some forensic investigations, and to help you decide whether it is a worthwhile thing or not. Okay, let's move on to the second thing on the list, which is real estate. Before starting to look seriously, have your lawyer, your negotiator, or your mortgage broker on board. Unlike what goes on in other countries, closings on real estate happen very rapidly. And if you're not ready to do it rapidly, you won't be able to close a deal. Plus, in Israel, there's contract law, which is very different than it is in most other countries, which says that if you start negotiating verbally with a buyer or seller, it could be considered a contract, especially if they recorded it surreptitiously. So you need to use a lawyer to go and do all your negotiations for you, or to have a mortgage broker help you get started. You need to have the mortgage already negotiated before you go out and start looking at something to buy. Israel works very differently when it comes to real estate. And these are things that we can talk about in more details. Okay, page 22, what Yitzchak was talking about at the beginning. This is Yitzchak's and my um, strong areas to help with the investing process. Obviously, doing nothing means that you're already losing in most instances because you're losing because of inflation, which is still above where most of us would want to see it, especially the people who run the central banks. And there are just many possibilities out there. We've simplified it because you can do most of the things mentioned here via a simple account using a cash management system that I talked about earlier. One of the things that comes to mind that many of you are familiar with is that there's a Talmudic dictum that 1/3 of our assets should be kept in cash or near cash. 1/3 should be involved with businesses, which would be a stock portfolio for most of us, and 1/3 should be involved with real estate. Most people don't realize that all of that could be done through one brokerage account by buying things that are involved with real estate, buying things that are solid businesses, and having cash and near cash available most of the time. It's something that is very individualized, but is worth talking about if you need any help or have any questions in this area. And getting back to another thing that Yitzhak talked about is that everyone should take advantage of all the legally available tax shelters that each of their governments offer to them. There are ways to do investing with low tax or no tax, depending on what your nationalities are and where you keep your money. And it's something that is a vast topic in and of itself, and that we'd be more than happy to talk to you about in more detail. Finally, on page 23, I want to just briefly introduce you to the Financial Resource Network, which is the system that we're using for doing the family office here in Israel, and to our Swiss-based affiliate, 21st Century Advisors, that does investing in a very different manner than most investment managers are offering, which is that we offer you internally about 8 different ways to manage money, and we can bring in your existing investment manager if you can't continue with him or her to work through 21st century. And we have access to over 300 different investment managers and hedge funds that people can decide to use for their investments. So on the last page, you have contact details. This is page 24, and we'll be happy to hear from you, talk to you. But right now, with the remaining time, which is, I believe, 3/4 of an hour, we'll be happy to start answering some of your questions. Yitzchak, are you
Yes,
there?
I'm right here. And
Okay, so you want to start with the first question or?
I'll start with the second question. I'll come to the first one later.
Okay,
No, actually, what I'm trying to do, first of all, thank you very much. Mark. It was very, very useful information. Looking through the questions in the chat, I'm trying to organize it in a way that we'll have all the banking questions and tax questions in each of the things, so we're not jumping around too much. But I do want to just underscore one of the things you were saying before, towards the end, in terms of real estate, how important it is not only due diligence and not only getting the track records, but from my experience of having dealt with over the past 30 years with so many different wonderful companies, but also there are other companies that sometimes their track records are very good, for the first many years, and you even have prior exits from their investments, and it's fine. But you always have to continue to do the due diligence and check and that. So I just wanted to underscore that. Okay, let's go first of all to some of the questions that relate to banking. So some banking questions they had. By the my video is not on, or is my video
Oh,
on?
I see you.
Oh, okay. I don't see me, but if you see me,
Okay.
that's good.
Okay.
Okay. So in terms of some of the banking questions in that, one wrote that they don't know of any Israeli credit card which grants tangible credit points like in the United States. Most of the points are paltry, limited to the big famous retailers and not worth the hassle. Is there anything like the US point system?
Uh, Bank Leumi has recently introduced a card that gives more. I don't know the details, but it's splashed all over the Bank Leumi website.
To Bank Umi. Okay, very good. Um, Another question that's to do about are the international Schwab accounts considered an international bank account? Is it better to transfer some of these assets to Israeli bank accounts? If so, how much?
Okay, so I don't know the thinking behind the question. Maybe we'll get some clarification, but let me explain uh, the problem that we see happening with most North American and European Olim that come to Israel. They wind up bringing money to Israel beyond what they need for emergencies during the first 10 years. And that money, once it's in Israel, is taxed the same as it is the profits and dividends and interest from money for any other Israeli. The tax holiday only works for money that has not been brought into Israel yet. So during the first 10 years, other than having emergency funds here, there is no incentive to go and bring in cash to Israel and invest it here. That's number one. Number two is that Israeli investment managers often are not prepared to deal honestly with Americans because of the PFIC and FATCA issues. And as a result, there are punitive taxes that could be generated if you don't do it right. Furthermore, it makes little sense to bring pounds, euros, dollars to Israel and have a robust investment account here that needs to be diversified back out of Israel. So you're changing foreign currency to the shekel, and the shekel will be reconverted back to foreign currency and unfortunately, uh, investment managers in Israel, because it's a much smaller system where you don't have billions of shekels uh, as a basis for investment funds and so forth, the management fees are here much higher. So
Mhm.
it's easier to go and keep the money abroad, have a robust investment program and to go and report the taxes relatively easily from American tax forms back to Israel, while on the other hand, Israeli taxation records are going to be a little bit more complicated, particularly if your tax preparer is abroad, to be able
Hmm.
to report in another country.
Hmm.
Do you think
Okay.
that answers the question, or you think they were asking about something else?
It seems to be if they have, they'll chat in. All right, let's
Okay.
keep going on. Very good. So here's another question. Is it better to bring my money from the United States to Israel or leave it in the United States? It's a certain amount of money, let's say $200,000 in an investment company. Is there a bank in the United States that I can use, even though I'm a dual citizen, one that has a debit card and can be activated from Israel? And is buying real estate better? And if so, in Israel or in the United States?
Okay, so the first part of the question, yeah, I think I pretty much answered with the previous question is
Mhm.
that for international investing and even investing in Israel, it's easier and cheaper to do from the United States through a cash management account. Uh, Israel, there are uh, a handful of funds that are registered in the United States that invest back solely into Israel that one can use and not have to bring money into Israel and uh, have a very diversified Israeli portfolio. Plus, there are outside of Israel at least 100 companies that are Israeli that are listed on foreign stock exchanges, mainly in the United States, Frankfurt, and London. So there's a lot going on there. Now, the cash management account comes with a debit card, a Visa debit card. It does not give points, which was one of our first questions, but it does other things that are quite interesting. So if you have money in a cash management account you can take out on a daily basis or to pay for things up to the total amount of cash that is currently in cash in your account. You can't use the credit card against invested securities. Uh, and the exciting part of it is the card is completely cost free for transactions. You can use it for buying groceries, gas, taking cash out in local currency at a cash machine here or any place else in the world, pretty much. And you are getting the middle rate, which is known as the Shar more or less. It's just a little bit off or on depending on when they're getting their fixing for the day. So it's a very effective way for bringing money into the country. There are some basic rules which we can explain to you separately. They're not important for right now, but there's a lot going on. Now, in terms of real estate, in terms of residence, uh, one of the things that you may have noticed in the slides was that renting for, particularly if you're somewhat older like ourselves, is a better deal than buying. Here's the reason why. Uh, in America or England or most any other developed country, the amount that is paid for rent is in a ratio most often compared to the value of the property if it was bought that day. In America, the cap rate, the amount that is paid on an annual basis on a rental contract, is usually around 8% of what the value of the property is. whether it's an apartment, a house, or whatever. Here in Israel, the cap rate, how much you pay in rent compared to the cost of the property, is around 3%. That's a huge difference, meaning that people who want to live in Tel Aviv but can't afford to the price of owning a flat in Tel Aviv can rent very often because the cap rate is lower compared to the actual price. And
Hmm.
that's an important consideration. Plus, in Israel, you have to understand that you have significant costs for buying and selling real estate. And often you will do what are called shiputzim, improvements in the property that are not going to necessarily have any added value for the next buyer. And as a result, if you're coming here, say, in the middle of retirement and you may need to go on to a senior citizen facility within 5 years or so, buying a property and then selling it so that you can come up with the cash for the senior living facility might not be a winning combination.
Hmm. Okay, let's keep going. Boy, we have Baruch Hashem, many questions to get to, and
Okay.
hopefully, and if we don't get to all of them, just to say we will be in touch and we'll be able to follow up. You know, Mrs. Bracha Leah Tates could be in touch with you, set up times to meet, and go over all your questions. But let's keep going as much time as we have, and Baruch Hashem, people are still hanging in. So, by the way, one of the questions, in order to avoid bringing assets into Israel, I've invested in Israeli-based ETFs, since right exchange traded funds. Since my source of assets is still dollars, is there any specific advantage to doing this over US-based ETFs?
Well, I assume the question comes from a person who's buying American registered ETFs uh, um, that are investing into Israel. If
Right.
that be the case, then they're doing a wise thing for a reason that they didn't mention, which is particularly when you're living abroad and your money is back in the United States or England or whatever, you need to be diversified. So buying American ETFs that are investing in America is great, but a significant part of your assets should be in ETFs or similar things that are being invested abroad, including Israel. And that is hit home really hard for many people in the last year, where the shekel has strengthened against the dollar by about 15%, almost unprecedented in our history, that the American currency has weakened overall in the last year. And as a result, if your money was just invested and doing nicely just in American type securities where they invest in American companies, you would have seen returns, but converted back to dollars, they might not have been a positive result. While if you were invested in Europe, Asia, and Israel in particular, you would have done still very nicely because the underlying securities aren't dollars.
Well, not in dollars, right? Very good. Okay. Um, what about mixed couples? I have dual citizenship, meaning American and Israeli, she says, and my husband is Israeli. Does it still make sense for us to keep some money in the United States?
Okay, that's a great question. It was
Right?
something I meant to
Yeah.
talk about it earlier, uh,
Hmm.
and a topic that to me is really important. Most people are going to be a little bit shocked about what about to say. Everyone, particularly if there's a multi nationality marriage, should have either a post uh, marital agreement or a premarital agreement. in terms of assets. Therefore, if assets are separated, so some are under the husband's name and some are under the wife's name, but the marital agreement says that at the end of the day, they're going to be treated equally for each other and for offspring, then things are covered because under uh, American and most countries' laws, if you are not an American investing in America, or non-American investing into Canada, you are treated preferentially for taxes. Most people don't know that. And if you're an American uh, investing in America, you're treated the same way no matter where you are in the world. And that's tends to be true for several other countries as well. So having a prenuptial or a postnuptial agreement can solve that problem, and having separate investment accounts for the husband and a separate one for the wife can be a perfect solution and reduce taxation and inheritance problems.
Terrific. Good answer. Good, great question. Okay, I have a question for accounts that I have in the United States where the beneficiary is my husband or daughter. We are all American Israeli citizens residing here in Eretz Yisrael. What do I need to be aware of and do to allow smooth transfer of funds to the beneficiaries when necessary? What documentation might they need to provide regarding their place of residence or other matters? Does it make a difference if the money is to go to their accounts in the United States or to Israel? Thank you for your
Okay,
time.
great question.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, and this is one of the advantages of having an account in the United States or Canada, uh, because the system in the United States in particular has the acronym of JTWROS, which stands for Joint Tenants with Right of Survivorship. So if you and your spouse or you and your children are owners of that account, there's a number of things that happen. Number one is the first name on the account is the one who is listed for tax purposes. It can be changed if you want, but it just makes it simpler for tax purposes. So if you have a widow and her children who are owning the account, the widow is the one who's uh, uh, doing the taxes because that money was hers. However, when she or a spouse or whoever the other owners are pass away, there's no probate needed
Hmm.
because it just automatically continues with the surviving uh, owners of the account. So this can be a real big advantage, and it means that you can avoid having to do wills and probate and so forth. And it's a simple American system. Now, the other part of the question was, how do I properly register my children or whoever it is onto my account, particularly for tax shelter accounts like IRAs or RRSPs or other things, depending on the country. And that is to give their name, give their social insurance or other numbers, and to go and perhaps provide a email address, an address, a physical address, and telephone number. Those kinds of identifiers make it easy for the custodian to know who's who and how to get in touch with them and where to send the money.
Terrific. All right, moving on. We'll try to go for a little bit longer. Can you give advice on what type of investments U.S. citizens living in Israel should avoid, such as PFIX or S&P 500, or I guess mutual funds?
Okay, so for Americans in Israel, anything that's a PFIC a passive foreign investment company needs to be avoided. That means all Israeli funds, ETFs, collective investments, which are not registered in the United States, are subject to a punitive annual tax from the IRS. However, all individual shares, all individual bonds, and business holdings are not PFICs. They can be held in Israel. But as I said earlier, if you buy the American version of these things, like the ETFs or mutual funds that invest exclusively in Israel but are American managed in the United States and have American trading symbols, you can have the best of what Israel has to offer without any of the deficits that the American law has.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Okay, moving on. And if anybody has any last questions, you can still put it in the chat now, and we'll just try to, if not, then we'll come up with the last, I think, one or two questions here. The four members of our family are approaching our 10th anniversary dates coming up this fall. We're assuming that for past year 2025, we can continue filing U.S. taxes, but nothing yet for filing with Israel. Earnings on U.S. assets, IRA income, and Israeli income have resulted in no U.S. tax owed each year. How would we handle the mixed year of 2026? How would we handle subsequent years? We pay no income tax on our limited Israeli-based wage income. Thank you.
Okay, so anybody reaching the end of their tax holiday and this person is asking it at exactly the right time, they need to get a consult from a tax attorney or a local tax attorney or uh, an Israeli accountant. And they will tell them by looking at what they have and what they want to accomplish, what is the best way to start keeping track of things, whether it's worthwhile to close foreign accounts, bring them here, or whatever. So there is no one answer that fits all situations, and it should be done with professional advice.
Okay, very good. Are work pensions a PFIC issue?
Great question. Okay. For those of you who have retirement accounts in the United States, the UK, or elsewhere, one of the ways that you know that what's going on with that it's a retirement account, it generally says um, Abraham Cohen, uh, uh, custodied by Schwab for his benefit as an IRA or whatever it is. And it's the custody thing that's the key here. And it's the same thing in Israel. When you have a Kupat Gimel or other types of uh, pension type things, you do not own them. Therefore, they're not an asset to be taxed by the United States, according to most opinions. And it's only when you start getting money out of the trust, the money is being held in trust for you, that becomes taxable. But while it's accumulating or being held by a third party for you, it's not an American asset for tax rules.
Okay, here will be the last question for the moment. Oh, no, another one just popped in. Okay, we'll see. So, hi, I have lived in Israel for 50 years. And since I never had income from the States, I never filed an income tax return during all those years. In 2017, I started investing in the US stock exchange, etc. Then a year later, did some other things in Maytov trade. As an American citizen here, are all the dividends have 25% been removed and sent to the IRA? So what's your question? Today, retired. I have a pension and a bituach leumi, and I draw dividends, etc. My question is it possible to reduce what I pay in U.S. taxes?
Not to my knowledge, but it's worth talking to a professional. And depending on where you are and what you need to know, we can give you the names of several people to talk to.
Okay, another one popped in. Let's go a little bit further. I've heard that the assets of one's IRA, the portion not withdrawn, are handled differently. Are there tax consequences on the values of the IRA assets in Israel? Also, is income from a retirement pension from the US considered a passive income?
Okay, so the IRA question is simple because it goes back to what I just explained. It's held in trust for you. So it's not a asset that you own. It's something that is being held by a third party for your benefit. The second part of the question, I'd need to know a lot more to be able to answer. Uh,
Okay, so that we could follow up with, and maybe that's sort of the way we can sort of wrap up our time together for the moment, is to say that a lot of people have other questions and very specific questions. So when we'll be in touch with you to follow up, we'll be sending out a recording of this particular seminar. And for those of you who have other questions, we can follow up with you individually and give you more personalized attention. We can get together with you, or we could, chat on the phone or whatever. Um, Mark, do you have anything else you want to say in closing?
Yeah, just to follow up on what you were just saying, we internally use Google Meet, and we'd be happy to talk to you in person like we're doing today, but with the microphones on and all it ends. And it doesn't mean you have to get up and come to an office or we come to you. It's very convenient, very simple these days. And two or three of us can be on the phone, and perhaps one of us will have a brighter idea than the others and try to help. Uh, just want to thank everyone for their patience. We had a nice turnout this evening, and there's a lot more to discuss. It all depends on what your needs are.
Very good. So I thank you very much, Mark. I thank all of you for attending and staying the whole time, Baruch Hashem. And we can follow up. And we thank that we didn't have any sirens during this time. We should continue to see only safety. We should all be well. And I wish you all a good night. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye now.